your story is one of turning rejection into redirection. That's what I love about your story. It's really awesome. So take us back. You're on the show with Duran, and he says, you got a book in you, and you're going, man, I'm just here. Like, this is all, you're riding a wave. Walk us through, it's not so much that I want you to share every big step that you took, but talk us through the confidence piece as you begin to step into this new world. And now you've become a very popular keynote speaker. You've written 2 best-selling books. Your show's going bananas. What happened in those? Like, walk us through what's going on in your head, the confidence piece, how you begin to start. How'd you start into speaking? When the show? I want people to hear this because this was not some grand strategy of yours.
No, hardly. I wish that it had, but It would have been a lot more. The journey would have been more fun. As everyone always says, enjoy the journey. I wasn't enjoying the journey back then because I didn't know where I was going. Right. So there is something really profound that happened that day with Elvis Duran. He was someone who I had on a pedestal, right? So in life, we put some people on pedestal. He had made it, right? He was light years ahead of me. When he spoke this truth for him that he said, obviously you're writing a book. Yeah. He had so much confidence. He transferred confidence from him to me. Wow. And I received it.
That's good.
And that was something I noticed that day. I went in there really nervous. Getty Images was taking pictures. I was just hoping I could, not fall on my face or say something that I'd be embarrassed about. Didn't know what was going to happen, but he truly transferred confidence into me. It was someone I respected, I admired, and then he spoke a belief into me. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget, I jumped on the plane on the way home that night and I Googled, how do you write a book? I had no idea. I wasn't a literary major.
That's great.
And, it comes to find out, it said you have to start writing X amount of hours a day. And I thought, great, I've just been fired. I have a non-compete. I'm going to start writing. So that's what I did. I took action and started writing. And once I got enough content written in a Word doc, I thought I should hire somebody that's done this before because I have no idea what I'm doing. I hired an editor. And then within 5 months, my first book was done.
I love this. Okay. What'd you start writing about? I want people to hear this.
It's funny. The first thing I started writing about was that lady that fired me because I was just so pissed off. Right. So I started writing about like how awful it was and, how negative the situation was.
Yeah.
But what that triggered, which was interesting, was I thought to myself, wait a minute, I kind of felt like this when I got divorced. Wait a minute, I kind of felt like this when I got sexually harassed at work and I ended up leaving the job that I loved because I hated the toxic environment. Wait a minute, and I started piecing together all these different times in my life I had felt in a similar fashion. And that's when I realized I bounced back from each of those by rebuilding my confidence. Wait a minute, there's a system and a process here, and I can teach people how to do it.
All right, so that's a perfect segue. Teach us, talk to us about your methodology for rebuilding confidence because this is gold.
Oh my gosh, there's so many different ways. One of the first things that for me was impactful, getting rid of negative people from your life. I call it firing your villains. For me, that was the biggest thing. I had a woman, and I'm not saying that it makes her a bad person. I wasn't her person. She didn't like me. She didn't want me around. Everyone knew it, myself included, but I tried to ignore it for a while. Again, doesn't mean that the villain is a bad person. It means they're not your person. And when you have a negative person in your space, you have got to fire them and clear them out so you can start allowing positive people to come in. That was the biggest game changer for me.
And I want you to talk about that. What did that look like? I mean, is that this big confrontation? I think that's what people think when they hear you say that. It may have been. Or was it just you going, you know what? I'm just going to slowly put up some boundaries. I'm curious, what did that detachment look like for you? Because I think a lot of people need to hear, how do I go about that? Because people are scared, to kind of say, hey, I'm moving on.
Well, my situation was when she fired me. So that was a clean break. Well, it was a big dramatic moment, right? So but that worked. The minute that woman was out of my life, within 24 hours, people started showing up trying to help me. It was the craziest thing. Now I know it's not crazy. When you have a negative person in your space and you're allowing them to be there, you block positive people and opportunity from coming in. That is fact. So there are other situations that I actually write about a lot in my second book where they're the sneaky villains, the person that when you walk into lunch to see them, you're in a great mood. But by the time you're leaving, you're second guessing yourself. You're feeling a little discouraged. They're giving you that side eye, not mean, but just it doesn't feel great being around them. Those are the people you need to create boundaries with, right?
Yes.
You need to let them know, you know what, my schedule's packed this week. Unfortunately, I can't make lunch, and start creating some space for yourself to protect yourself. You don't need a big dramatic fight with them. That's definitely not necessary, but you've got to start putting your needs and wants first and noticing how you feel when you spend time with certain people.
Yeah. I've got to tell you that there are people in my life that I call lifters, because every time I'm around them, they lift me. And I'm thinking about 4 or 5 different dudes right now. They're all in different walks of life. And what's interesting, Heather, is it's rarely anything that's a conversation about what I do. It's not even a professional lift. They're not like saying, oh, Ken, you're good at this and what you do. It's many times it's one guy, it's all about laughter. He lifts me because we laugh. Another guy lifts me because he's interesting. I learned something when I'm around this dude. He's just one of the most well-read dudes, and we end up having these crazy conversations about stuff that I've never even thought about. It's that kind of stuff. I found that lifts me, and in some ways, the way it works on my confidence is if I'm having a rough day and I'm just down and I got the negative self-voice going on, just shutting that voice down. Now, those two dudes, the one I'm talking about, the thinker and the laughter dude, they're not saying, Ken, you're awesome. Dude, you're great. It's just they've replaced the voice with something that's just more positive. And I find that when I'm with those two guys and then I'm done, that what was previously a negative narrative for me is not as negative, or it may just be, I'm like, what were you worrying about that for? Does that resonate with you?
Oh my God, 100%. Or even when I got to see you recently and we were both out to support a mutual friend of ours, when you start showing up to support and encourage other positive people, it just lifts you up from whatever is going on in your life.
True.
So I couldn't agree with you more. My other go-to, if I don't have someone like the people you're describing around me in that moment, I put my earbuds in and I go for a run. I do that for myself through music and movement. That works, right? Some people meditate, some people paint, right? There's so many different ways. It's just about noticing, when do you feel best in your life? Who are those people that you're around that help you to feel your best? And what are those things that you can do for yourself when nobody is around to make you feel better? Yeah,
it's so true. Okay, so I want to talk about confidence as a public speaker. Obviously, you were an executive, so, I would call you a professional communicator before you ever gave your first paid keynote, because you were high up the ladder in the communication business, for heaven's sakes. An award-winning executive, certainly a good communicator. But when you step out and you start to begin to develop content, writing books, and you speak, and these are for impressive companies, there's got to be some little voices, little gremlins that like to hop on your shoulder, maybe even minutes before you walk out there. I love getting people like you to talk about what you faced and maybe some things that you kind of use to hack to go out there and go, you know what? I still got something to say. They're expecting me to get out there and say it. How have you gotten more confident as a communicator publicly?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you nailed it. For 25 years, I spoke for my work. It wasn't called keynote speaker, but I was speaking and communicating for work. So I had experience. And I don't ever want to downplay that, because of course, anytime you do something new, it's going to be scary. And the more reps and more practice you give yourself, the more confident and competent you're going to be. So I already had a lot of reps in. And again, if you don't have reps in on something yet, just start putting the reps in. It doesn't matter if you're just filming yourself. The more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to be. But as I began taking those bigger stages and in different environments and knowing people are questioning, does she have the cred to be here or not? I remember researching and hearing that Beyonce, one of the biggest performers of our time, channels her inner Sasha Fierce, she calls it, an inner persona before she takes the stage. And I started thinking, if Beyonce, who's a billionaire and sells out, every arena around the world, has to do that, that's okay that I'm going to do, I'll channel my inner Sasha Fierce or whatever persona that is. The next thing that I do is I think about 3 different times in my life that I was scared to go in to do something and it went really well. And I read those experiences before I'm going to go on a big stage to remind myself, wait a minute, I've been here before. I've seen this movie.
That's
might not
good.
Be the same. It works. It's social proof
so
to
you
show you.
Journaled these stories out? And so
absolutely.
And so that's okay. That's really good. That I've never even thought of that. You went back to 3 times in your life where you're scared, what-less, and then you just decided, I'm going to revisit those, and that does tremendous things for your confidence. You're like, I've been there, I've done this.
You can do it again. Being there and doing it, visualization. This is what professional athletes do. I was interviewing Sarah Blakely live on stage at a conference in Boston, and I was intimidated. And for 1 month, I would close my eyes. I'd watch video of her, and then I'd close my eyes, seeing me interview her, seeing her smile at me, seeing the crowd go wild. Prime your mind so that when you actually get there in real time, you're more comfortable to say, oh, I know how this is going to play out. I've seen it happen this way before.